Her name was Alara Munro, 38 years old, born in the quiet coastal town of Kaikoura, New Zealand. By all appearances, her life was simple, almost uneventful. She worked as a marine biologist, spending her days studying the migration patterns of humpback whales. Her home overlooked the ocean, and her mornings were marked by the smell of salt and the rhythmic sound of waves crashing against the cliffs. But beneath this tranquil life, Alara carried a deep, gnawing question that refused to leave her heart. Was she truly ready to meet God? She attended church irregularly, prayed when life felt overwhelming, yet deep down, she sensed something was missing. A whisper in her spirit told her that time was running out, not just for her, but for the entire world. Her friends saw her as warm and compassionate, but they didn't know the sleepless nights she spent watching the moon over the water, wondering about the end of all things. She had read the scriptures about the return of Jesus, but they felt mysterious, almost hidden. Surely, she thought, there would be clear signs before such a world-changing event. Alara didn't know that soon. She would not only see those signs, but hear them from Jesus himself, and that her understanding of his return would be completely shattered. In the weeks leading up to the event, Alara's life seemed to flow with the same predictable rhythm it had for years, or so it appeared from the outside. She woke at dawn, pulled on her weathered blue jacket, and walked down the cliff path to the small harbor where her research vessel awaited. The air in Kaikoura was always clean, crisp, and salty, carrying the scent of kelp and the distant hum of fishing boats. But on the inside, there was a restlessness, like the low rumble of an earthquake far beneath the earth. She had been noticing strange patterns, not just in the whales' migration, but in the world itself. Birds flying erratically, storms appearing out of season, tides that seemed unnaturally high for that time of year. At night, she would watch the news and feel a heaviness settle over her chest. The headlines spoke of wars intensifying, nations on the brink of collapse, famine spreading where it had never been before, and people turning colder, more selfish, less human. She remembered her grandmother's voice telling her, "When you see the world grow dark in the heart of man, know that the time is short." Alara kept a journal by her bedside, not of her research, but of her thoughts, dreams, and the strange impressions she felt in prayer. In recent days, her writing had changed. No longer was it about everyday life. Now, it was filled with warnings, images, and a sense of urgency she couldn't explain. She found herself writing phrases like, "The sky will speak before it falls silent. 3 shadows before the light disappears. Prepare. It will happen when you least expect it." She didn't know why she wrote them, but the words came so strongly that she felt she couldn't ignore them. Her closest friend, Talia, noticed her change. Over coffee one morning, she asked, "You've been distant lately. Is everything okay?" Alara hesitated, swirling her spoon in her cup. "Do you ever feel like something big is coming? Something that will change everything?" Talia gave a nervous laugh. "Like the end of the world?" Alara nodded silently. The truth was, she felt something pressing on her spirit, like a countdown she couldn't see but could hear ticking inside her. And this is where I want to ask you, the viewer, have you ever felt that same invisible countdown? Have you noticed changes in the world that feel like more than coincidence? Write in the comments what signs you think are already happening around us. Your thoughts might confirm what others have been feeling too. Because whether we realize it or not, some moments in life are the quiet before the storm, and Alara was just hours away from hers. It was a Tuesday, though the day itself felt strangely heavy from the moment Alara woke up. The sun was just beginning to rise over the Pacific, but its light seemed weaker, as if a thin veil hung between the sky and the earth. The gulls were silent that morning, a small detail, but enough to make her pause at her kitchen window, coffee in hand, and feel that something was off. Her work schedule for the day was routine, a short trip out to monitor whale pods traveling north. She dressed in her thick, waterproof gear, packed her field notes, and made her way down to the harbor. The air was sharp and cold, and the ocean seemed restless, the swells higher than usual despite calm winds. Halfway to the research zone, the boat's radio crackled, not with voices but with static, then short bursts of a strange, high-pitched tone she'd never heard before. She tapped the side of the device, frowning. The sea beneath her had taken on an unusual hue, darker, as though it reflected a sky that wasn't there. Then, Everything happened in seconds. A sudden shudder passed through the boat. Alara looked down and saw a massive wave forming on the horizon. Not the kind you surf, but the kind that swallows. Her instincts screamed for her to turn the vessel, but before she could react, the swell hit. The boat tilted violently, sending her overboard into the freezing water. The shock was immediate and brutal. The salt stung her eyes, the cold stole her breath, and the roar of the ocean filled her ears. She fought to reach the surface, but the waves tossed her like a rag doll. Her life jacket kept her afloat, but a floating beam from the boat struck her head. In that instant, the sounds dulled, her vision narrowed, and the world began to fade. She remembered sinking, not just physically, but into silence. It wasn't panic anymore. It wasn't even fear. It was a strange surrender. The last thing she saw before the darkness closed in was the sun breaking through the clouds, spilling a beam of light onto the water, almost like an invitation. Her last earthly thought was not of her work, or even of survival. It was a single piercing question. Am I about to meet him? And you, watching this right now, I have to ask, if you were in that moment, knowing the next breath might be your last, would you be ready to stand before Jesus? Write your answer in the comments, even if it's just a single word. Yes, no, or I'm not sure. Your honesty might be the first step towards something life-changing. Because for Alara, the next moment wasn't darkness. It was the beginning of something beyond this world. The moment she left her body. At first, there was nothing. No sound, no sensation, no thought. Only an endless, velvety blackness. Alara thought she was unconscious, but then she realized something strange. She was aware, not in the way a dreamer is aware, but in a deeper, sharper way. It was as if her mind had been freed from the heaviness of her body. A faint humming began to rise in the distance, not like a machine, but like 1,000 voices singing in perfect harmony, yet without words. She opened her eyes, or what she thought were her eyes, and found herself suspended just above the churning ocean. Below, she saw her own body. It floated limply in the water, face pale, hair drifting in the current. She expected to feel horror at the sight, but instead there was a strange detachment. Her thoughts were calm, almost curious. So that's me, but I'm not in there anymore. The water that had moments ago felt icy now looked like molten sapphire, glowing faintly as sunlight pierced it. She noticed details she never would have seen in life, the fractal patterns of foam, the dance of light beneath the surface, the infinite shades of blue. Then she realized something else. She wasn't breathing, yet she felt no need to. There was no hunger, no thirst, no pain, only weightless freedom. The pull of the earth seemed gone. She drifted effortlessly, as if the laws of physics no longer applied. A warmth began to spread through her, not from outside, but from deep within her being. It was as if love itself was pouring into her, filling every empty space she never knew she had. The warmth grew until it became light, not blinding, but soft and living. She turned toward the source and saw it, a radiant glow, brighter than the sun yet gentle enough to look upon. It seemed impossibly far and intimately close at the same time. The light wasn't just around her, it was calling her, drawing her in like the embrace of someone she had always known. As she moved toward it, the sounds became clearer. The harmony was layered, infinite, with tones that seemed to vibrate through her very soul. Each note carried something: joy, peace, and an unshakable sense of belonging. Alara thought of her fears, her regrets, her questions, and they all seemed to fall away, like sand slipping through her fingers. For the first time in years, she felt completely safe. But just before she reached the light, a shadow, not dark, but more like a veil, passed in front of it. And then, she saw him. A figure stepped forward from the brilliance, clothed in light itself. She didn't need an introduction. Her soul recognized him instantly. His eyes, they were fire and water, authority and mercy, eternity and the present moment all at once. She couldn't speak, not because she was afraid, but because every word she had ever known felt too small. And now I want to ask you, the one watching or reading this, if you were suddenly face to face with Jesus right now, what is the very first thing you would say to him? Please write it in the comments. It might be a prayer, a confession, a thank you, or even a single tearful word. Someone else might read your comment and find the courage to speak to him too. Because for Alara, this meeting was not just comfort. It was a message for the world. The figure drew closer, each step radiating a brilliance that didn't just illuminate the space. It illuminated her. His presence was unlike anything Alara had ever experienced. It wasn't just that he was there. It was that everything in existence seemed to center around him. His robe shimmered as if woven from threads of light itself. There were no seams, no folds, only flowing purity. The light around him didn't cast shadows. It removed them entirely. It was as though the darkness that clung to the deepest parts of her soul evaporated in his presence, and then his eyes met hers. She had expected them to be intimidating, maybe overwhelming, but instead they were the perfect paradox, fierce and gentle, ancient and new, infinite, yet entirely focused on her. In that gaze, she felt as though he knew every memory she had ever held, every word she had spoken, every sin she had hidden, and loved her anyway. When he spoke, it wasn't only sound, it was vibration. His words seemed to move through the air, the ground, and even through her very spirit. The sound was like water over stones, like wind through ancient trees, like the first note of a song you somehow already knew by heart. Alara, her name, spoken with such tenderness that she felt her knees buckle. There was no accusation in it, no disappointment, only belonging. "I have been with you all your life," he continued. "Even in the moments you thought I was far away. I called you here to show you what is coming, and to prepare you to speak." She wanted to speak, to tell him everything, her fears, her confusion, her longing, but she found that her thoughts were already known to him. Without words, she asked, "Why me?" "Because you will tell the truth without fear," he said, smiling softly. "And the truth must be told now." His expression grew more serious. The warmth in the air shifted, still loving, but now heavy with urgency. Behind him, the light seemed to ripple, and she caught glimpses of scenes she didn't understand yet. Vast cities under shadow, oceans surging, crowds of people looking to the sky with terror and wonder. "I will give you 3 signs," he said. "When they are seen, the time is short. The sky will grow dark, and the world will change in an instant. But do not be afraid. I am with those who are mine." She felt the gravity of his words press into her very being. This was not metaphor. This was a divine warning, and she would have to carry it back with her. But before he spoke the first sign, he stepped closer. His hand, strong, warm, and utterly alive, touched her cheek. The touch carried more than comfort. It carried power, the kind that restores and redefines a person from the inside out. "Alara," he said again, "this message is not for you alone. It is for the nations. You must speak, even when they laugh, even when they turn away, because some will listen." She nodded, tears streaming freely. Her heart pounded with both awe and dread for what she was about to hear. "And now, I want to ask you, if Jesus himself appeared to you and said he was about to reveal 3 signs before the end, would you be ready to hear them, even if they terrified you? Write yes in the comments if you're ready, or no if you're not sure you could bear it. Your honesty matters, not just to you, but to others who will read your words and reflect on their own readiness. Because in the next moment, Alara heard the first sign, and it was unlike anything she could have imagined. Jesus stepped back slightly, yet the connection between his gaze and Alara's spirit did not break. Around them, the light began to swirl, shifting into a vast, living panorama. It wasn't a mere vision. She felt as if she had been transported into the scene itself. They stood on the edge of a massive city she didn't recognize. Towering skyscrapers glistened under a blazing midday sun. The streets below teemed with people, men, women, children, all rushing in every direction, their eyes fixed on glowing devices in their hands, not on each other. There was noise everywhere, car horns, shouts, music, advertisements flashing on giant screens. It felt overwhelming, chaotic. And then, it began. A sound erupted from the heavens, deep, resonant, unlike anything she had heard before. It was not thunder, though it shook the air. It was not a trumpet, though it carried a sharp, commanding note. It was as if the very sky itself was groaning. People froze. Some looked up, shielding their eyes from the brightness that suddenly poured across the horizon. But the light wasn't steady. It pulsed, like a heartbeat in the heavens. "Elvira," Jesus said beside her, his voice steady. "This is the first sign." The sun, still high above, began to dim, not slowly but in sharp, unnatural flickers, as though some invisible hand was turning it on and off. Between each flicker, the world seemed to lose color, draining into gray. In the distance, she saw mountains trembling, their snowy peaks shedding avalanches. Oceans surged without wind. Animals fled, birds in chaotic swarms, dogs barking in the streets, horses pulling free from their reins. But the most terrifying part was the people. Many fell to their knees, crying out in fear. Others shouted curses at the sky. Still others ignored it entirely, forcing themselves to keep walking as if nothing had changed, their eyes locked on their glowing screens. "This," Jesus said, "is the warning before the sky goes black. It will be seen across nations. Every soul alive will witness it, and none will be able to deny it. Yet many will choose blindness over truth." Elvira's heart pounded. The air in the vision felt heavy, charged, almost electric. She could feel the vibrations of the groaning sky in her bones. "When you see this," he continued, "know that the time is short. Do not be afraid, but do not be silent." The vision began to fade, and the warmth of his light returned. Elvira felt herself tremble, not from fear of him, but from the enormity of what she had just seen. She turned to speak, but found no words. Jesus simply nodded as if to say, "You will remember." "And now I want to ask you, the one watching or reading, if the sky above you suddenly began to flicker, the light dimming and returning in unnatural pulses, what would be your first reaction? Would you run, pray, or deny what you saw? Write your honest answer in the comments. Your words might awaken someone else to what could be coming, because for Elvira, this was only the beginning. The second sign would strike deeper and closer to home. The light around them shifted again, and Elvira felt her spirit being drawn forward, not violently, but irresistibly, as if reality itself was changing scenes before her eyes. Suddenly, she stood on the crest of a barren hill, looking out over a vast plain. It stretched for miles, but it was not empty. In the distance, she saw entire cities, and above them, thick pillars of smoke rising into the sky. It wasn't ordinary smoke. It was dense, dark, almost alive, twisting and writhing like serpents in the wind. The air was suffocating, heavy, as if it carried ash and something invisible yet deadly. A deep chill crawled through her spine, and it wasn't just because of the sight. It was as though the planet itself was sick. Then, the sounds began. First came a distant chorus of sirens, hundreds of them, wailing from every direction, all at once. Then came the screaming. Not anger, but pure despair, the kind of cry that makes your soul ache, the sound of multitudes receiving news they could not bear. Jesus stood beside her, and his voice broke through the tightening silence inside her heart. "This is the second sign." She looked at him, waiting for an explanation, and he pointed toward the cities. That's when she saw it. The sky above each city was not blue nor gray. It was red, a deep, unnatural red, like blood spread across the heavens. As she watched, scenes unfolded before her like visions within the vision, showing different places in the world all at once. In one place, crowds fought violently in the streets, ripping food from the shelves of empty markets. In another, entire rivers had run dry, the cracked earth yawning like an open wound. In another, children coughed and cried while adults stared toward the horizon with eyes full of terror. "The second sign," Jesus said, "will come as a global collapse, both visible and invisible. The world will hunger, thirst, fear, and despair, not only for bread and water, but for truth, and lies will become a currency." The weight of his words struck her deeply. Elvira knew he wasn't just speaking of natural disasters, but of something spiritual, a darkness taking over the hearts and minds of humanity. As he spoke, the ground shook beneath her feet. In the distance, massive towers that supplied power to the cities fell like felled trees. The city lights flickered one final time and went out. "When truth is extinguished," he continued, The darkness that follows will be more dangerous than any night, and those who are mine must shine with a light that is not of this world." The words burned into her spirit like a seal. She understood that this second sign would be impossible to ignore. Every person on earth would feel it in some way. The vision began to fade, but the image of that blood-red sky stayed with her, as vivid as if it had been branded onto her soul. And now I want to ask you, the one watching or reading this, if you woke up one morning and saw the sky above you burning red like blood, while the world was collapsing, what would be your first action? Would you run to God immediately, or cling to material things? Write your answer in the comments. Your response may spark reflection in someone who today lives without thinking of eternity. Because for Alara, the most terrifying moment was still ahead. The third sign. The last before the sky goes completely dark. The third sign. The moment the vision shifted, Alara knew this one was different. The air itself seemed alive, charged with an energy that made every breath feel both heavy and electric. There was no gradual build-up this time. It was as if she had been thrown straight into the final moments before an irreversible event. She found herself standing on a mountain ridge, high above a landscape that stretched endlessly in all directions. From this vantage point, she could see oceans, forests, deserts, and cities all at once, as if the whole earth had been laid out beneath her feet. At first, everything was still, unnervingly still. Not a single bird moved. Not a single leaf swayed. Even the waves on the ocean seemed frozen, as if time had taken a deep, held breath. Then it began. A deep, resonant vibration rose from beneath the ground. It wasn't just sound. It was a feeling, a low hum that rattled her bones. The mountains shivered, sending rocks tumbling down their slopes. The oceans began to stir, but not from wind. The water itself seemed to respond to the unseen tremor, surging in unnatural patterns. And then, the sky, the color drained from it entirely, fading to a pale, sickly gray. And then, in one sudden, horrifying moment, it cracked. She didn't know how else to describe it. It was as if a massive, invisible hand had torn a fissure across the heavens, revealing an immense darkness beyond. Through that rift came something she couldn't fully comprehend. Not an object, not a light, but a presence. It radiated both terror and awe, like standing too close to the raw power of a storm that could tear the world apart. Lightning began to fork across the sky, but it wasn't like earthly lightning. It moved in deliberate, almost intelligent patterns, forming shapes that seemed to speak a message no human language could express. Each strike illuminated the earth in brief, blinding flashes, and with each flash, Alara saw glimpses of events happening everywhere at once. Crowds on their knees in prayer, tears streaming down their faces. Others running in chaos, desperate to hide underground. Some standing motionless, staring upward, unable to look away. Jesus stood beside her, his expression solemn, the light around him brighter than ever, though the world itself was dimming. "This," he said, "is the last sign before the darkness. The heavens will be shaken, and all eyes will see it. No one will be able to deny what is happening, and every heart will be revealed." As he spoke, the fissure in the sky widened, and a deafening sound filled the air. A single piercing note that seemed to reverberate through all creation. It was not a human-made sound. It was something ancient, eternal, final. Alara's spirit trembled. She realized this was not just a warning. It was the dividing line. After this moment, there would be no turning back. The vision began to fade, but not before Jesus looked directly into her eyes. "You must tell them, Alara. Many will not believe until they see, but blessed are those who prepare before the signs." And then the mountain, the sky, the fissure, all of it, vanished, and she was once again standing in the warm radiance of his presence. Now I have to ask you, if the sky above you split open, and every person on earth saw it, revealing that there was no more time to choose, where would your heart stand? Would you be ready, or would you wish for more time? Write your answer in the comments, because your words might reach someone who is still undecided, and for them, time is running out. Because for Alara, the visions were over, but her mission had only just begun. The brilliance around her seemed to pulse, as though it were alive. Alara stood in the warm, enveloping presence of Jesus, still trembling from the weight of the 3 signs. She wanted to stay there forever. Every fiber of her soul longed to remain in that peace, that unshakable, holy safety that no pain or fear could touch. But then, his expression changed. Not in anger, but in a deep, compassionate seriousness. "Ilara, it is not yet your time to remain here. You must return." Her heart sank. Return? Back to the cold water? Back to the brokenness of the world she had just seen from above? She didn't want to go. Tears welled in her eyes. "Lord, please, let me stay with you." He stepped closer, placing his hand over her heart. The warmth was overwhelming, flooding her entire being with strength she did not have in herself. "I am always with you, but now you carry what they need to hear. You have seen what few have been allowed to see, and now you will speak." Before she could answer, she felt it. A pull, like a sudden current dragging her backward. The light began to recede, and the sound of that heavenly harmony faded into the distance. She tried to cling to it, but her hands grasped only air. Then came the cold. It was sharp and biting, slamming into her like a wall. She gasped violently, and water poured from her mouth. The taste of salt burned her throat. Her eyes flew open. She was back, floating in the turbulent sea, her body shivering, lungs aching. Hands grabbed her under the arms. Voices shouted. Someone was pulling her onto a boat, not her own, but a small fishing vessel. A man's voice yelled, "She's breathing! She's breathing!" She coughed, each breath a battle. The warmth of Jesus' presence still lingered inside her, but now it was mixed with the raw, painful reality of flesh and bone. Every nerve screamed with cold, and her heart pounded erratically. Lying on the deck, she stared up at the sky, the same sky she had seen in the visions, now calm and deceptively normal. She knew what the world would one day witness, and she knew that nothing about her life could ever be the same. The fishermen wrapped her in a blanket, their faces full of confusion and concern, but she barely noticed. The weight of the mission pressed down on her. She would have to tell them, and everyone, what she had seen, even if they mocked her, even if they called her crazy. And now I want to ask you, if you had been shown something that could save millions of people from being unprepared, but you knew most would laugh at you, would you still speak? Write your answer in the comments, because sometimes the truth needs a voice, even when no one wants to hear it. For Ilara, the choice was already made. She had seen the signs. She had heard his words, and she knew that silence was no longer an option. The days after her rescue were a blur. Ilara's body healed quickly. The bruises faded, her strength returned, but her mind and spirit were forever altered. She could no longer look at the world in the same way. Every sunrise felt like a countdown. Every crowded street seemed filled with people walking toward a cliff they couldn't see. At night, she would lie awake, replaying every detail. The groaning sky, the blood-red heavens, the great fissure tearing open the firmament, and more than anything, the voice of Jesus, not condemning, but pleading, urging her to speak before the time was gone. She began to write. Pages and pages filled her journal, descriptions of the 3 signs, warnings and prayers for the people who would one day see them. She prayed over every word, asking God to guide her so that when she spoke, it would not be her voice but His truth reaching hearts. The hardest part wasn't believing what she had seen. It was knowing that most would refuse to believe it. She thought of the fishermen who saved her. Even they, though kind and curious, had exchanged doubtful glances when she tried to describe her experience. She realized something Jesus had meant. The greatest challenge wouldn't be the signs themselves. It would be the blindness of the world before they came. Still, she could not remain silent. Ilara began speaking at small gatherings, starting with people she trusted, a church group, an old friend, a local prayer circle. At first, her voice trembled, but as she spoke, she felt that same unshakable warmth she had known in his presence, steadying her. She told them about the 3 signs and what they meant. Some listened with tears in their eyes. Others shifted uncomfortably and avoided meeting her gaze. And yet, for every person who doubted, there was another who seemed stirred awake. Someone who would later tell her, "I had a dream like that once." Or, "I've been feeling like something is coming, but I didn't know what." She began to see her mission not as convincing the world, but as calling to the ones who could still hear. One evening, after sharing her testimony at a small seaside chapel, Alara stepped outside and stood under the starlit sky. The wind was cool, and the waves whispered against the shore. She closed her eyes and prayed, "Lord, let me be faithful until the end." A deep peace washed over her, and she knew, no matter how hard it became, no matter how much resistance she faced, she would keep speaking, because the time was shorter than anyone realized. And now I need to ask you, reading or hearing this, if you knew the world had only a short time before everything changed, what would you do differently starting tonight? Would you make peace with God? Would you tell someone you love about him? Would you prepare your heart for the signs? Write your answer in the comments. Your decision might inspire someone else to take their first step toward salvation, because one day, the sky will go dark, and when it does, there will be no more time to choose. The choice is now. Alara's journey began on a quiet shore in New Zealand and ended with a message for the entire planet. She was an ordinary woman, a scientist, a friend, someone who doubted and wrestled with questions like all of us. Yet she was chosen to see what many ignore, that the end will not come as most imagine, and that the signs will be so undeniable that every heart will be laid bare. She did not share her story for attention. She shared it because she saw it. She heard him, and she knew silence would be disobedience. The 3 signs she witnessed were not distant myths. They were vivid, detailed, and global. The flickering sky, groaning as if alive, a warning before the darkness. The blood-red heavens over a collapsing world, where truth itself would be traded like a commodity. The great fissure in the sky, when all creation would know the moment of decision had arrived. And after all that, she came back, not to resume her old life, but to deliver the message. Prepare now, choose now, do not wait for the signs. If you have listened to her story and felt even the smallest stirring in your heart, that quiet voice that says this matters, don't ignore it. The greatest tragedy would be to hear the warning and do nothing. Here's what I'm asking you. Write in the comments the one step you will take today to prepare your heart and your life. It could be praying for the first time in years. It could be forgiving someone you've held bitterness against. It could be opening your Bible tonight instead of waiting until tomorrow. Whatever it is, say it publicly. Let your words encourage someone else who is reading. And if this story has moved you, share it. Someone you know may be asleep to the times we're living in, and your decision to pass this on could wake them up. Because the truth is simple. The signs will come, the sky will go dark, and when it does, there will be no more time to prepare. The moment to decide is now.